Your mother disowned you, I should say.
She did, right. And because, you know, she said, if you're not going to be a doctor, you're not my son. And this was in a public restaurant. It was very loud. I mean, the whole restaurant went completely quiet. It's whenever people try so hard, they fall, you know, they slip on the banana peel. And that happened to me quite a bit. And then from the moment that I stopped trying so hard, that's when all these crazy things that were really big, much bigger than I ever would have planned, started to fall in place.
You're talking about the healing power of writing.
Right.
Yes. Your immune response goes up with the writing process.
Today, how to succeed in business and life without really trying. Gary Fong, author of The Accidental Millionaire, joins us. His parents wanted him to become a doctor. Instead, he became a wedding photographer, an inventor, and millionaire. And then Diana Raab, a nurse who survived breast cancer, tells you the secret of healing with words. But up first, Gary Fong. Great to meet you, Gary.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And I have to tell you, I expected some kind of like business advice or motivational book, but actually it was just damn funny, I have to tell you. I wasn't expecting that. There were so many crazy stories.
Good, yeah.
But you had kind of the typical, I know so many people, and some of them may be watching this show, so I guess I won't give names, but whose parents, one of them, some were Asian, some weren't, but I know the pressure among Asian kids to become doctors or lawyers, and you had that, right? Mommy and Daddy wanted you to grow up to be a doctor.
I mean, even before I was born, it was known what I was going to be. I was going to be a doctor and bring my parents lots of Chinese grandchildren.
But you followed your own plan, which I give you a lot of credit for, because I've heard so many people then who later in life regret.
They have a big midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
In fact, some people who were not very happy with their parents were forcing them to do what they wanted to do instead of what the person themselves really wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. So. And I'm thankful that I had the ability to stand up to them.
Yeah, and I know people who didn't, and well, anyway, I could go off on a tangent. I know a lot of stories about that. Okay. But what you said? Okay, we'll give it a year to see if you could make it as a wedding photographer.
Yeah,
because at first your mother disowned you, I should say.
She did, right? And because she said, if you're not going to be a doctor, you're not my son. And this was in a public restaurant. It was very loud. I mean, the whole restaurant went completely quiet. But then after everything calmed down, she said, look, I'll let you give 1 year, but you've got to make more money than a doctor, or else you're going to medical school. And that was like a judge, handing down a provisional sentence. So it took everything I had to do that.
But it gave you kind of a sink or swim kind of ultimatum, I guess.
Live or die, actually.
Exactly. Well, they'll kill you.
Right. Yeah.
But it's very interesting how you got started, because again, well, a lot of times, again, you see the pre-professional students who have their big game plan planned out since they were even born, probably by their parents or by themselves as they were in kindergarten, getting the kids in the right kindergarten and everything these days. But you just kind of wung it or stumbled through this. So how did you stumble into photography, or how did you...
Well, that's where I think it's kind of like a weird coincidence fate, and that's the thing about the book that is so odd. I think if you saw like all the different parts where it just seemed like something would just jump into my path that were completely unintentional. I was miserable working in the hospitals, and I said, I can't do this anymore, I'll kill myself. So I wanted to be in something where I was with a lot of happy people, and it was either work at Disneyland or being a wedding photographer. Because if you're a wedding photographer,
ruled
you
out Disney, huh?
Right, exactly. But during that time that I was really miserable being a doctor, I was just flipping through Life magazine and telling my girlfriend about this guy I knew who was into martial arts and was a musician and was a photographer, and he seemed to just kind of be one step ahead. He kind of seemed to be a precursor to my future life.
And that was Rocky Gunn?
Rocky Gunn.
Actually used to be what, on the TV show Kung Fu?
He was the prince that Cain killed.
Oh, okay.
About a 2-second part, it was and then that was it. Yeah. But but it was it was weird. I turned the page and then there was a centerfold of Rocky Gunn, and I thought there's got to be a hidden camera, because there's no way that the universe is going to give me a gong that loud. But I thought I had to pursue it, and then wound up carrying bags for him, and then I kind of knew what my future was going to be. So.
You say carrying bags for him. Mm-hmm. So you were his apprentice for a while.
Yeah, for a few weddings, and that was quite a trip.
You had some great stories. In fact, I actually used one of them in another show. I was telling you about the one where, I love the one where the guy's getting married and the ex-girlfriend shows up in a wedding dress. I was just cracking up with some of this. I mean, it's terrible, but it's...
She's very persistent. And that goes kind of to the book. It's like if you want something too much, you wind up completely missing opportunities that are surrounding you at every moment.
And just so the audience knows, they put her in a taxi with a lot of money and sent her out of Dodge so that she didn't interrupt the wedding, right?
Yeah, they just kept throwing money and said, you know, don't stop until the meter runs out. And people were throwing in 20s, and you know, and they're holding the door shut and just keep going.
And even the woman who put the doilies on her veil and couldn't see going down the aisle, and
people stress out a lot when they have high expectations. And that's the part that I think makes the book so funny. It's whenever people try so hard, they fall, you know, they slip on the banana peel. And that happened to me quite a bit. And then from the moment that I stopped trying so hard, that's when all these crazy things that were really big, much bigger than I ever would have planned, started to fall into place.
I just want to mention one other wedding story that I want to ask you about the business. But also you told about like the couple who was like fighting going down the aisle practically, which you knew was just doomed. I mean, right? Doesn't that have a big red flag written all over it if you're fighting on the way to the altar?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he ripped her veil right off her head. And you know, all the hair went boing, and it was quite, yeah. I mean, I'd seen it all.
Awkward wedding.
Yeah, yeah. Having shot 1,000 weddings,
you've seen it all.
You've seen it all, yeah.
were those the worst case scenarios, or was there worse that I did?
There were many that were really crazy, you know, and it was just fun, and that's really kind of was the idea behind, like, I've got to write this down because, you know, I mean, what a great situation comedy that is just, you know, you're in the nucleus.
There's a TV show or a movie in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I guess, you know, again, great material though in a way. But it can be fun too, which you mentioned, you know, kind of the upside of it. But the way you were able to turn this into a business though, you invented the whole concept of the storybook wedding?
Correct, right.
Which is?
Well, what happened was, until the time I started to look at what was wrong with wedding photography, because wedding photographers weren't getting paid anything. They would just
even Rocky, you said, wasn't charging very much.
He was the best in the world, and he lived in a garage.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So, but the thing that everyone was doing wrong was they weren't storyboarding the sequence. I mean, a wedding's all about memories, so you need to kind of lay things out. What they were doing before is they were just giving like 1 8x10 of the cake cutting, you know, all the traditional photos, cake cutting, bride with groom, bride, groom, you know, things like that.
And you said they'd order a 20-pack of photos, but then you found out if you shot a lot of photos and you could get them to buy a lot more photos, so you could like upsell them, I guess. I don't know what the phrase is.
Yeah. I mean, just basically I made a story out of it, but kind of a picture book, so that it had action and reaction sequences, and just like a storyboard in Hollywood.
In fact, you said you got that from watching what they were filming Charlie's Angels on the street, and you actually saw the storyboard they were using, and that gave you the idea.
It did, yes.
Which again shows you how something can come out of nowhere and give you the idea for your whole business.
Yeah, or it comes out of everywhere all the time. But when you're focused on a goal, you just completely don't see it.
We'll be right back. And we are back with Gary Fong, author of The Accidental Millionaire. Well, speaking of bolts out of the blue, so you saw that storyboard for Charlie's Angels, but another thing was the bumper sticker. Tell me about the bumper sticker on the car.
So, in the middle of the book takes a complete change. Up until the bumper sticker is, I'm completely goal-oriented in plans and expectations and everything. Then I have a really bad episode where everything goes wrong, pianos were falling on my head, everything like that. But all my goals that I had tried completely just disintegrated. So I was so upset, and then I almost rear-ended a car because I was just so wrapped up in my misery. And then I looked at the bumper of the car that I almost hit, and it had a bumper sticker that said, "Since I gave up hope, I feel much better."
And that became your life philosophy.
Well, it was weird. It was just kind of like turning the page in the Life magazine thing. It was kind of like a message. And I started to laugh, and then I started to laugh too much, and then I started to actually cry. But then I realized that I'm not getting anywhere with having all these high hopes and goals and everything like that. So I just said, that's it. I'm going to give up and not try because it hurts too much to try. And when I did that, then the pyramid of all the different business successes kind of came falling all into place, accidentally, actually.
Well, you talk about one inventor that you met along the way who was saying, you know, that like the way to succeed as an inventor is to look at a product or service and just see how to improve it, and there's always a way. And you were giving all these ideas for like luggage and things, and probably kicking yourself that you didn't do it.
Yeah.
But it's amazing the things though that you did come up with. So you had the storybook idea for the wedding,
right?
And then that led actually. Well, the other thing I was wondering before I go into that was just the way, though, that the technology has changed too. Because back then, a lot of this was almost grunt work, right? With the, I mean, now that you've got digital photography and stuff, that
Right. Yeah, it really needed to be innovated. The problem is that you had photographers who typically were kind of a lower income group, and then also just they're more touch and feel rather than bits and bytes. So we had a lot of. Most of my job now is educating people why I can help them improve things just by showing them a different way. So
your first year, you made how much as a wedding photographer?
64, 190. I remember that one very
well. And that
well.
was, I mean, that was years ago.
That was 1984.
84.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was even more back then.
Right.
So mom was happy. You got to stay away from medical school.
They said you can have another year. Yeah. And then the next year I doubled it. It went to 121. So it just kept going. Yeah, which was really obscene at the time for a wedding photographer.
And then you got into this whole printing business too, which again the technology's probably all made obsolete in certain ways, but you at the moment sees that, which was for realtors. You were
oh, that was interesting. Yeah, I did kind of an advertising service for realtors, so I would make postcards rather than them sending out envelopes. It would just be a color photo, kind of cheesy, them standing with their foot on the bumper of their Mercedes or whatever, but it worked. And
you were selling a lot of them.
Lots until the crash. Then then of course.
Can you tell us what the volume was? You were
probably at the time I was doing maybe $70,000 a month.
Wow.
In my third month. Yeah, I mean it was just an idea, and then it went viral. So
then the crash.
And then it crashed. Right.
And then I suppose today technology's completely made all of that obsolete, right? Because people probably just do it themselves. So.
Yeah.
But then you went on to what now that that again was using photography because you had the pictures on the postcards and that sort of thing. But then you invented certain things used by photographers?
Correct, yeah. So what happened was, the guy that told me, how do you invent? And he said, look at the suitcase. What could you do to it? And I said, I'd put wheels on it, and I'd put a handle on it. And he said, we'll do that. And then, but I had my goal of shooting 7 weddings in July, so I completely gave it up. Now when I look back...
If your last name were Samsonite, I would know.
Exactly. But, that would have been $1 billion idea, right? The wheeled luggage. But I didn't do anything because I had my...
Every time I go on a trip, I say, why don't I have one of those damn wheeled suitcases? I still haven't caught up with that.
No kidding. Wow.
I always take the gym bag, but that's another story.
Okay. Yeah, but anyway, so I swore to myself that if I ever invent anything or come up with an idea again, I'll never let that one go by. So I was in an airplane looking at the in-flight magazine, and you know how they have like hotels and casinos and car rental ads?
Sure.
This one guy had a plastics manufacturing thing. He says, we'll make parts out of your idea. And I thought, what a terrible marketing place to put this. I've got to buy something from him because it's such a bad ad. And then I just decided that I'm going to invent the light sphere. And what the light sphere is when you do photography, you've got like this, it's kind of like a light bulb. It's like holding a flashlight on people. That's why it looks so bad. And then I realized that when you're in a room with a lampshade, everybody looks nice. It's because the lampshade, all the light goes to the ceiling. A lot of it gets captured in that little lampshade. And so that was my invention.
So like diffuse lighting sort of
Correct.
thing?
Right, yeah. It's just basically like a lampshade for a flash unit. And then we've sold about 500,000 of them. So that was my big success.
And again, so all of it just coming out from the wedding photography. But along the way, too, I love the fact that you were very honest about the fact that you were, a terrible employee.
I was.
You got fired all the time.
Right.
You were fired from more one-hour photo places than...
Yeah. Parents were very worried about my future. Couldn't keep a job, So, yeah, 8 jobs in a row, kept getting fired.
But I was thinking, again, too, those one-hour photo places are another thing that are all gone because of digital photography.
And it's weird, because you do have to constantly reinvent. But you can't try to invent. That's the part that's weird. I've got, 11 patents now. And people go, do you just sit down and decide you're going to invent? And I'm like, if you do that, you're stuck into this expectations world. You put stress on yourself and the creativity doesn't flow. It's completely not trying that makes all the ideas pop in. It's very, very odd.
So it really is just that kind of bolt out of the blue sort of thing where...
Yeah, the harder you try, the more that you're trying to force something into place, and it just doesn't work, at least for me. I mean, that's why the book is the way it is. It's my story. Yeah.
Well, I love it because you did your own thing and it worked for you. So, what are some of the others? So, with 11 patents, what other types of things have you invented?
Well, we've got it's called a flip cage, and we've got something that it's a rubberized cage that holds your point and shoot camera, and then you unscrew the tripod thing, turns into a. It was just on the Today Show, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, it turns into a tabletop tripod, and then it turns into a copy stand. But it's just a little thing. Let's see, what else have I invented? Lots of different. Just I
Sold
have
a lot of those, by the way.
Not yet, because it's still kind of.
Oh, it's still new. Okay,
but
okay.
Now that I have a plastics company, it's kind of fun because I can just draw out ideas and then we make the tools and then out it comes.
Well, you'll come up with something, I'm sure, even if you.
Yeah.
I like the way you would like buy something and then you'd figure out what to do with it later. You know, it's.
Yeah.
But so with the plastics company, so it's just manufacturing for other people as well, not just any kind
yes.
of.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting business, and it's a lot of fun because there's always things that you want and nobody has, so you can make them as long as you have customers. You can do anything. So
Mama's happy these days?
She's no longer alive, but my dad is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they both saw you succeed though, and
they did, and they really admired my independence, and I actually had to be their teacher. And this is really funny. In the book, I have what's called the Declaration of Independence. I knew that they were so stuck that they couldn't parent me, so I wrote in my journal that I'm going to be my own parent and teach myself and do everything to get me off drugs or whatever, and be everything that I could. So
well, you said that I think your father in particular grew up like in a wartime situation, and so for him a lot of life was just trying to seek stability or peace or not being bombed or something,
right?
Which was a very different way that you were looking at the world.
Right. Yeah. He absolutely did not want to go for any opportunity because it represented risk, and I found that not going after opportunities was risk. So I just didn't want to stay in one place.
Well, it's a fun, crazy read, How to Succeed in Life Without Really Trying. Gary Fong, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck with the plastics factory and the next invention, too.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks a million.
Okay, thanks.
We'll be right back. And we are back. Joining me now is Raab. She is author of Healing with Words, A Writer's Cancer Journey. Pleasure to meet you, Diana.
Thank you.
So you got the terrible news that everybody dreads. You had cancer.
Right.
And breast cancer, which actually is surprisingly common. We've done shows with a plastic and reconstructive surgeon saying that 1 in 8 women actually has cancer or gets breast cancer at one point. But you decided to deal with it a little bit differently than some people. You wrote a book about it. That was your way of
healing. Yes.
But what I also liked about the book was that it was actually just good from a medical point of view because, in other words, walking people through what happens, your reactions, because I love the fact that you were getting second opinions or going to other doctors and not just, so I don't know whether, you may have been focusing more just on, on the healing side of it, but I just thought even just the way that you handled yourself the whole way through was just a great example for people.
Well, I'm a writer. I've been writing since I'm 10 years old, and I write to heal, and I also teach writing at UCLA to help people heal through various situations in their life, whether it's cancer, whether it's divorce, whether it's the loss of a loved one. And I'm also a nurse, and so that's why the book is sort of like, I call it a self-help memoir, because I want to help other women through their process, and it also has journaling prompts throughout the book so people can write their story. And actually what inspired me to write the book was not necessarily the breast cancer, which was diagnosed and healed in 2001, which was the second cancer I was diagnosed with 5 years ago. It's an incurable cancer, but it, I've just sort of decided not to make cancer my life. I want to inspire others to journal out their feelings and to just move on with their life and think of any mishap in your life as a riveting incident to move forward. And I don't like living in the negative. I like rather living in the positive, and I try to teach others to do the same.
Well, and honestly, the thing that I thought when I met you that is just you're so vibrant and so full of energy, as people say, but you'd never dream that you've had cancer or have cancer at all, because you just
Thank you. Well, my husband was dropping me off, and he said, you know, people are going to want cancer if they look at you. And I said, that's a horrible thing to say, but he was sort of being funny, but it was his way of complimenting me. But yeah, I'm trying to give a different face to that, like you say, the bad news, the C word. I take care of myself, and I do a lot of journaling. And I think everybody ought to have a journal in their purse and in their car, and just to write down your feelings. Just 20 minutes a day is all you need. And if you make it a regular practice, the benefits are absolutely huge.
I think you quote Virginia Woolf saying it was a way to make kind of order out of chaos in life, you know, which I think is a nice way of thinking.
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially if you do it regularly, and you know, go to a bookstore and find a journal that inspires you and a pen, and every day just to open the journal, 15-20 minutes in the morning is the best time when we're sort of fresh, and write down your thoughts. So some people like doing at the end of the day, like a gratitude journal. And it's also fun to look back at the journals years later. I journaled throughout my whole adolescence. I journaled. My first journal actually was my mother gave me when I was 10, when my grandmother committed suicide, and she didn't know how else to help me cope, and so she gave me a journal. It became my best friend.
You were very close to your grandmother.
I was very close to she raised me. And well, that was like 45 years ago, but you know, I think we deal with things differently as children. As adults, we tend to dwell back and look back at the pains of our youth, and we think about them more. We sort of take things for granted when we're younger. We just say, we go with the flow, sort of thing. So as an adult, I restudied it. But yes, I've journaled all the time, and I encourage others to also.
Now, you've also set up a program or run a program to help cancer patients in particular, or?
Well, I teach at UCLA Extension, the writing program, and I teach all kinds of people to write through their feelings, whether it's high-risk teens. I teach high-risk teens as well, high-risk teen survivors of abuse, people who've lost loved ones, and cancer survivors. It's sort of like a mixed group. Anyone who feels the need to get the words on the page, and they don't know how to start, you know. They just like, well, I always wanted to write, I just don't know what to do. And, you know, with the recent unemployment, I had a huge turnout in my class because people were so stressed out they didn't know what else to do, so they said, well, let me see if I can write my feelings, and it was very healing for a lot of them, and hopefully they're continuing after the course is
finished. Write the next screenplay.
That's right, that's right, yeah. Well, there were some people that were into that, sure.
Do you know, from a medical point of view, I mean, I'm one of those people who wants to believe in the power of positive thinking and that sort of thing. I mean, are there any studies that show whether, you know, I mean, I've heard things like environmental factors can influence outcomes. I mean, are you aware of any, you know, is it just for the mental peace of mind, or is there actually a physical side of this as well that you're aware of, that, you know, that it can influence outcomes?
You're talking about the healing power of writing.
Right.
Yes. Yes, there's been numerous studies. I guess the pioneer in this is Dr. James Pennebaker, and he's done some studies that actually shows that your immune response goes up with the writing process and just writing down your feelings, and certainly stress release is something that happens when you're writing down your thoughts and your concerns. So definitely it improves health, and you can see it, you know, he has done many studies on that.
You were a little surprised early on when you were first diagnosed. You mentioned that I think one of the hospitals or one of the doctors, or maybe someone you worked with, had the idea that cancer patients were people who held everything in, or maybe that some kind of negativity or whatever maybe triggered it, or I don't know if that was the idea, but I think obviously that's not your take on it, that it doesn't come from, you didn't feel that you ever repressed anything like that.
Well, I was actually a very quiet child, you know. I think after I lost my grandmother, I was very quiet and did spend a lot of time reading and writing, and I did keep a lot of things in. I think only as an adult did I decide to, you know, that it was healthy to get things out. So there is something in that, you know, that cancer survivors very often are givers, or very often do keep things in, although I don't like making generalizations like that, but there have been some studies in that area. I know Louise Hay has done some work in that as well.
Well, with the breast cancer, you were very smart as far as getting, you know, doing all of the tests, the mammograms, and getting treatment, and which is just crucial for something like that.
Yes, early detection is critical. Of course, I did not discover anything myself. It was just through an annual mammogram. There's no cancer in my family at all, and so I was just diligent about my yearly mammograms, and luckily it was early, and just needed to have surgery, big surgery, but I didn't have to have chemo radiation, so I was thankful for that. You know, a lot of women do have to go through that, but there's different, you know, there's different ways to heal cancer, and you know, some people decide to go the natural route also. And I talk about that a little bit in the book and the pros and cons. And I also have a big section in there on how to actually start writing about your journey. And I'm hoping other people. I mean, it doesn't mean that it has to lead to a published book, but it might. You never know.
Well, in our final minute, what would you say to people who are looking for that healing, whether it is for something physical or mental, spiritual, that sort of thing? What would you say to the people?
I would say that everybody ought to keep a journal, and the benefits are huge, and the perseverance and the regular keeping of a journal is just, it's so much cheaper than therapy, and something you can do yourself on your own time. Your own therapist. Your own therapist. And really the journal is also your best friend. It doesn't talk back. It's there with you whenever you need it, in the middle of the night, first thing in the morning. So I think everybody ought to keep a journal, whatever style or color they like.
Now, separate from Facebook or MySpace or the way we're all tweeting and twittering, and but this is different. It's more of a private, formal.
Right. It's for your eyes only, and the great thing is the grammar doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you spell things wrong, if you cross out. I just suggest to my students, don't cross out and rip out too much, because then you won't have anything to look back to years later if you tear it out.
We'll have to see if you use any of the internet symbols like LOL or OMG. Or
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Diana
Gregory.
Raab,
nice meeting you.
And much success with the program.
Thank you.
For helping other people.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.